Today on CJ Off-Road, we're going to show you how to get rid of your factory fender flares. The factory flares on your JK are great for the highway, but if you want to add some more clearance and better off-road performance, then today we're going to look at this flat fender set fitting your 2007-2018 Jeep Wrangler. These fender flares are constructed of a durable UV-protected ABS plastic and come in a smooth satin black finish. The flat style construction is going to add a ton more tire clearance and give your Jeep a really aggressive look. They feature an integrated amber LED on the front fenders to make sure that you stay legal. They can be matched to paint your vehicle. All the installation hardware is included, and we're going to get them installed on our 2008 Jeep Wrangler. Tools needed for this installation: a 1/4-inch ratchet, 10mm socket, 11mm box wrench, a marker, a pair of snips, a clip removal tool, and basic wiring tools. We're going to get started installing our new flat style fender flares onto our JK. The first step is to remove the fender flares. We're in the rear, we're going to pull out the few push pins that there are and get started pulling those off. Once you get all the push pins pulled out, my favorite part of this install is to pull off the factory flares. Grab the corner and just start pulling towards you. Once you get the flare removed, make sure you remove all the broken clips that have been left, if you have any. Once you have your Jeep all cleaned up, you're now ready to start installing the brackets for your new flares. We did a little bit of prep work, as you can see here. The L brackets are attached using the bolts and nuts provided. You're going to put the nut in through the back, that way it doesn't hit the body once you push pin these onto the tub. Now there are a few different ones, but as you can see if you look on the back, it does say DR-R, and that's driver's rear. So you're going to know that some of these pieces are for the driver's side and the others are for the passenger side. With that being said, let's get them installed. If you wanted to retain the factory wheel weld liner, you would simply detach this from the outside flare here, put it up there, and draw a line where you need to cut and then reattach it. Since we're going to be using our Jeep out on the trails, we're going to leave the liner out and just hit it with a little bit of black spray paint, that way it blends in. We can now get started putting the bracketry onto our Jeep. We're going to use this longer piece with the two L brackets to go to the rear door right here. This is a 4-door. On a 2-door, it would be the same, but it's right up against this door here. And we're going to work our way down through. Then we can install the rest of the brackets. The little bracket that goes in the center only has one L bracket with a long extension piece that should be facing towards the front of the Jeep. Has a little bit of curvature to match your body line. I found that it helps to put the push pins in now, and then you can push the stud through once they're lined up in the holes. Once you have the middle bracket installed, move on to the rear piece. Now the shorter end of the curve should be at the top of the Jeep, no matter what side you're on, and it'll line up with the curvature. It's pretty easy to tell. Once again, gonna put the push pins in first, and then we'll get it installed. And that does it. Now you're ready to install your new rear flare. Before you install your fender flares, make sure that you put this rubber seal onto the outer edge of them. That way it doesn't hit your body and cause any unnecessary scratches. I'm going to start by just pulling off this little red section to allow some of the tape to be exposed. And I went ahead and put the sticky side on the inside just in case you see it. It would be on the inside and you'd never see it on the outside of your Jeep. And then we'll just use a pair of snips right here at the end to cut to length. Before you install these, make sure you press the inside, make sure that adhesive really gets a good grip, and that the trim is all the way pushed as tight as it can to the fender. Grab another 5 push pins and then you're ready to put on the rear flare. Now this is going to install right over these brackets here, and then the push pins are going to go through the flare and through this metal L bracket that we put on. I'm going to start with this back corner and work my way forward. Then put the last one in. Now that it's all pinned into place, we can repeat the same process on the other side, move on to the front end. We're gonna get started working on the front now that the rear is all buttoned up. We're at the driver's side, we're gonna start removing the flare. Just for reference, I wanna show you guys how much tire clearance we have. Just for a point of reference, we're about halfway in the middle of our flare, and you can see from factory, we have about 8.5 inches. I'm sure once you get these flat flares on, it'll really increase our articulation, make this height go way up. To get the fender flare removed, we first have to remove the 5 10mm bolts that are holding on the fender, the inner fender structure, and this kind of subframe structure here. They all use 10mm bolts, so let's get them off now. Make sure you keep all this hardware for later. After you trim your liner, you'll reuse it. Twist the light counterclockwise here to make the bulb pop out of the housing, that way you don't rip it off. Once that's disconnected, we can pull the fender flare off. Just like in the rear, just grab a hold of the fender and pull it towards you. Be careful because the sheet metal is a little thin up here and you don't want to dent it. And we'll set that aside, save the inner fender for trimming. Once you have the flare off, pull out any broken tabs, we'll get it cleaned up, and then we can start installing the new flare. Once the flare is off the vehicle, we can disconnect the liner from the inner structure and the outer shell of the flare. That way we can reuse the liner, trim it down, and make it work with our new flares. These are aftermarket mud flaps here that we had on our rig. Normally you wouldn't have these, but in case you do, simply pop out the pins and then remove these Phillips screws to get started on the process. Then we're going to use a push pin removal tool to get the rest of these push pins out. That way we just have the liner remaining. We've got the inner fender liner all mocked up in place, just with one bolt to hold it on. We're going to trim this, use a Sharpie or any other marker, and just trim it right along this edge. That way you cut off enough that your flat flares will tuck in nicely with it. Just cut right along that edge, then you'll be ready to reinstall them. Just like in the rear, we're going to use the same bracketry that we did. Now it's a little bit different here. Instead of using push pins, we're going to actually use the hardware to attach it to our Jeep. Once you look at this thing, if you're looking at it from the back side of the Jeep forward, you're going to put a regular bolt nut in this hole and then this hole. For the other 3 that are left, you're going to put an L bracket first, and then you're going to put the nut and the bolt through. Now, like I said before, you're going to put the L brackets on, and then put the bolt through, and then into your factory Jeep hole, and put the nut on the back. Once I get these all on, I'm going to go back and tighten them all down. I can go back through and tighten these all up. We can put this final bracket on. Now, like I said before, you're going to do it a little bit differently than the rear. For this middle bracket here, it'll just get a bolt and a nut, and then for these 2 outer ones, put the L bracket on and then the bolt through. Put the L bracket on over this, and then put the bolt through, and we'll put the nut on the back side. Then you're ready to get them tightened up. Before you put your new flare on, make sure that your inner liner is all the way tightened up. With all the brackets tightened down, it's time to put on our new flare. Like the one before, we did put the trim piece on. Same process, just peel it, stick it right on. Grab the push pins and you're just gonna put them up through and then through the L brackets, just the same as the rear. We ran the factory wiring up through our new hole here. We're gonna trim this back and then reconnect the new LED lights that come with it, get those all bolted down. The kit does include twist connectors, but we're gonna make this a more permanent and waterproof solution, so we're gonna use these waterproof heat shrink butt connectors. The white wire on the Jeep is gonna go to the red wire on your new light. Then we're gonna heat these up and make them close. With everything connected, we can now screw on the light using the supplied hardware. Repeat the same process on the other side of your Jeep and your installation is complete. We just finished up the flat flare installation and they look really great. It completely changed the look of our Jeep, plus it gave us a ton more tire clearance. If I measure here from the center of the wheel where we did earlier, you're gonna see we gained almost 2¼ inch of tire clearance, which is really gonna let us flex this thing out on the trail. Now the installation time is about 2 to 3 hours, and you can find these flat flares as well as many other great parts for your JK right here at cjponyparts.com.